Hey, Ron, this is Dave. I had way too much pineapple pizza last night, so I'm not going to make it this week. You're on your own. Good luck, man.
Oh, ho, ho, we are indeed living by the numbers. It's time for Digital Dice, episode number 55. I'm Ron Juckett. Dave is away this week, so it's just me, myself, and I, and you and I are going to have a really good time over the next few minutes. Today, we're going to talk about how important to you are actual graphics in the games. I'm not talking about logos and all that, but would you rather have your game information done through video and graphics, or are you more of a text person and just want those lines of play-by-play, or do you just strictly do cards and dice and just kind of roll whatever it is in your head in your own imagination? They're all good. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but first, let's tell you how to get a hold of us. Well, we have a Facebook group, facebook.com groups, Digital Dice, all one word, and you can join the 427 members who post their projects there, or you can go to our website, www.digitaldice.com, which brings us right to our Spreaker show page, or depending on how you feel, you can send us a text or leave a voicemail at 978-751-DICE. That is 978-751-3423. And so that's how you get a hold of us. And Dave will be back next week. We will interview Carrie, the creator of Pro Strategy Football 2021. And then in 2 weeks, we will have that interview that we promised a while ago with Roberto Schiavini from Roberto Schiavini Games. Roberto was kind enough to answer some of our questions in written form, and Dave and I will read them to you. And, of course, we're always looking for your comments and suggestions for future shows. You guys wanted more interviews? Well, you get 2 in the next 3, so there you go. But first, what am I playing this week? Well, I'm not accepting any collect calls from anyone named Aunt Becky, and nor should you. And I don't accept orders for pineapple pizza. Just putting that out there. So what am I playing? Well, my 1978 baseball replay is coming to a climax. We are in the middle. I think today was day 3 of 11, or up to 11 straight days, depending on how the division races go along. As we close out the 1978 regular season, playoffs are coming up maybe in as soon as 2 weeks. That would be great. Best of 5 in the League Championship Series, and then following with the World Series, and that will not be in a bubble. The Texas Rangers, by the way, I have projected to win the 1978 American League West. I'm very excited about that. And so the American League East remains a hot seat. So if you're not familiar with that, check us out on twitch.tv, Retro Sports Network, or youtube.com, Retro Sports Network. I've also fired up my 81-82 Islanders and Oilers replay using Stratomatic PC Hockey. Having some fun with that. I just forget how much fun the 80s are. Played a couple Islander games. Had one game that was blowout city, and the second game against Washington for the Islanders was a 4-4 tie, and frustrating. And that's just, for me, the great thing about that is you just never know what you're going to get. You're going to get, the first blowout was against Quebec. It was like 12-6, which I think might be the all-time record I've had for goals in a game. And have I mentioned how much I love Brian Trottier? Yeah, he just does it all, man. And so watch for a video on my channel, not soon, but probably sometime in October once I've played a few games, that goes through as Wayne Gretzky's card tries to replicate the 200-plus points he had for Edmonton in real life that year. Right now, it's just not looking good. But they played Colorado and won 8-0, and so I think the next game for Edmonton is against Calgary. Also, because we will interview Carrie for Pro Strategy Football, we started, and the first one aired last night, or Thursday night. We did my first video with Al Red Sox, second video with Al Red Sox fan, doing Pro Strategy Football. It's not a game that Al and I actually play, The computer plays it, and I call the play-by-play, and Al Red Sox fan does the color, and we have a great time doing it. But it's interesting to actually do that in a game you don't play. Pro Strategy Football is a new visual simulator by Carrie Batts, and we'll have, as I said, Carrie will be on next week. So the game that we did was between the 1950 Cleveland Browns and the 1958 Baltimore Colts. It was the 1950s Decade Championship, and the next one we're going to do is going to be the 1960s AFL Championship, and that's all I'm going to say. So go to Super Bowl Tournament. That is, I believe, Super Bowl is one word and tournament is the other, on YouTube to watch that. I also did a virtual unboxing for Pro Strategy Football. What else have I been playing? Some pinball, of course. I pulled up a Tennis Elbow Manager and doing a new career in that because I hadn't had it on the, well, not new computer anymore, but doing that. So that's pretty much what I've been playing all good. Hopefully you guys are finding some projects, pulling some stuff out of the closet, especially now that winter is coming. Time to start your football project if you're going to do one of those. Maybe some hockey, especially as we get into the conference finals and the Stanley Cup in Edmonton. Basketball going on, Game 6 of the Celtics as we speak, so lots going on. So hopefully you can find a project too, and Dave is coming closer and closer as he tries to figure out his new schedule of getting out, starting a new project for himself too. So hopefully when we have him on next week, or when he's back next week for episode 56, he'll actually be able to tell you what project he has started. So look forward to that, and I always look forward to hearing, as I said, what projects you might have for us to hear about. Always, always good. So shall we get to the topic at hand? All right, so when talking about Pro Strategy Football, Al Red Sox fan has done quite a few videos on it. I did the virtual quote-unquote unboxing live Monday night, and then we did the first game of that series on Wednesday, and you saw it Thursday. And so it just kind of, there's always an argument, I think, with sports sims. Do you want something that actually shows you what happened? A little more advanced than maybe the chalkboard and Action PC, the baseball and the basketball and those four. The golf actually has pretty good animation because it is golf. And, of course, ASG Golf has decent animation as well. Or are you more of a roll the die and when you read the result, ground ball to X, or rolling at 33 and maybe getting in the second column in APA, knowing what that result's going to be? Would you rather just kind of have that play out in your head? If you're a big fan of, let's say, Football Manager 2020, which has incredible graphics, or Out of the Park 21, again, incredible graphics, where it's almost console or Madden or EA quality as far as what you're actually seeing in front of you. So you get the deep statistical simulation engines of OOTP or certainly Football Manager. I mean, that looks more like FIFA the series all the time, that has all the number crunching behind it, but stuff you can see, and so you can see whether or not your team is able to complete crosses into the box or how a shift work, and watching how the shortstop didn't dive in time for that. Pro Strategy Football is kind of visually a more advanced version of Tecmo. I called it the other night something similar to like Microsoft or Micro League Football or Micro League Baseball, which gave you a good visual representation of sprites. They're working, of course, on more and more advanced graphics on for each version of the game, but it does have a solid statistical sim behind it, which should give you good solid numbers. And so for me, anyway, when I do the pure cards and dice or the virtual cards and dice, because I am limited to the PC for that, I don't want any graphical logos or anything like that. I just want to be able to see the card result and picture it in my head, whether someone gave up a puck in the zone and someone was able to turn that into a scoring chance and Strat PC hockey, or lines of text playing Action PC basketball. You can imagine that pick and roll in your head, or the transition gold rush on a fast break, or whatever it is. I get a lot out of it because these games to me are all about using your imagination. When I do the Roberto Schiavini quick play games, you roll the result for the result and you see it pop up, and you can kind of picture in your head if Carl Lewis is struggling after 25 meters or such. For me, that's part of the fun. But on the other side of that coin, when Al and I were called, the couple games that we've called and the couple that you didn't see because they were practice games, it just gave being able to have a visual thing, and you sit there from the fake press box and all that, and you're going through and you can pick up different details. You can see when a receiver missed his cut and fell on a replay, or where the kicker is just sitting there ready to make the tackle, or whether a pass isn't dropped or is dropped, it hits off a shoulder pad, and you're able to give that extra bit of life to it that maybe in your own head you wouldn't have been able to if you just kind of repeat the same things over and over and over again. And I just find that I think more people would play these games if they knew that there was a strong, solid visual component to it. I'm not talking necessarily about the chalkboards and the Action PC line of sports are a bad thing. I think they get the baseball one and football one gets better every time. We'll be playing some hockey on my channel later this fall, and so it gives it a good flow. You can follow it, and because I'm calling play-by-play and doing my own color, it kind of adds to it. But for, like I said, my own version, because I think the Action PC is just a very good cards and dice sim with numbers that you can't, the engine that you can't see, that it just leaves enough to the imagination that you can provide the holes in the story. But sometimes you're just in the mood for that visual, that you call the play and you can see the play develop, and whether or not the hole was sprung for the running back or the receiver ran his route, or whether the defense messed up or whatever it is, and it just kind of gives it that little more oomph that you're looking for, that you might go, oh, okay, I played 4 or 5 games of this, and yeah, the numbers kind of come out right, but it didn't do too much for me. I'm not talking about any specific game there. Not every engine is going to grab you, and it depends, I also think, on your mood. Do you really want to use your imagination to read a book, or are you looking at a magazine where the pictures are kind of, tell a lot of the story? I mean, that's the reason why there's photojournalism, and that's why people read novels, and the same people used to read Life magazine, because they equally told the story, but some of it just works better in pictures than it does in written form. And so, yeah, and talking about, let's say, Football Manager, which is, I think, the most complicated sim out there. It's a management sim. It's not necessarily certainly not a replay sim, but the graphics they have now, and of course, it's not a small graphics department, is it's EA, it's FIFA quality. You can actually sit there and watch a game and call pass by pass if you wanted to. It's come so far from the last version I played, which might have had, I think, dots with legs. They kind of looked like, they weren't Weeble Wobbles, but it wasn't full motion anything. But you could get a sense of what you wanted was, as far as what the plays actually were representing and what you could change, because sometimes people learn better by watching something than reading something, and then you could adjust on the fly, which, if you were a fan of the Football Manager series, there's a lot of adjusting on the fly, especially if you get behind, because that's how you're successful in the game. Out of the Park Baseball, the most recent version of that, really has become almost console quality in as far as the graphic presentation there. You can still read the play-by-play text on the top of the screen if you want, but you get those kind of extra visual cues of whether your shortstop could have made the play to start the double play, or the base hit comes, just whatever it is, and that's a good thing. And the one thing I think that a lot of us who have played hybrid versions or computer versions of games, and one of the things that a lot of people complain about, especially with Stratomatic PC versions, is you don't really get a good bird's eye representation of what it is that you're actually seeing. Again, some of us just want to play the virtual cards and dice, and that doesn't matter. But also, sometimes you just want to sit and relax and watch. You want to have whatever input you want to have and watch the game pull out or unfold in front of you. And I think the nirvana for the industry, as far as the sports simulations industry, would be something that would have the quality and the accuracy of name your favorite card and dice or action PC sim or computer sim. Diamond Mine Baseball comes to mind. Something that is pretty much text play-by-play driven with the graphics that you would find in any console game. Wouldn't you love to play card and dice football or a football game that had the accuracy of card and dice and the graphics of Madden, and be able to see the players from your past, whatever your era is, unfold in front of you? Montana and what computer graphics are out there today in a era appropriate 49ers uniform, or maybe Marion Motley in a Cleveland Browns uniform, or Otto Graham with the 60 jersey. I think the other thing would be if you would hired Vin Scully to sit there and read the play-by-play for everything, and so you just have it, kind of like APA Baseball for Windows when Ernie Harwell did the first version, but super graphics with that. I think that is the ultimate wish for everybody, but to develop something like that would take years, and no guarantee it would sell. And what would you put for a price on that? And would you be allowed to do that? Modders would come in and be able to give you correct fields and correct logos and all that, but there's no way that these small companies can sit there and go, okay, we're going to have the super-duper graphics for you, but you got to supply all the logos and hats and fields yourself, because we can't touch that. I really do think that if someone took the time to say, okay, we're going to recreate the Polo Grounds or Ebbets Field or the ice at the Olympia or the high-definition old floor at the Boston Garden for whatever, that you can coach a game and watch it play out like that. My opinion is that we are getting closer and closer to that. And as Pro Strategy Football 2021 or future versions mature, to make sure that the stat engine and the graphics engine, this is not a criticism of the game, come closer and closer, I think it will raise the bar for other companies to try to become more graphical along with the rest of it. It's my understanding that the graphics part is the hardest to program, and so that's why we see improvements in flow and stuff like that for the Action PC library, but other things may or may not be easier to implement, such as replays on goals or in hockey, or if you have a walk-off event like you do in baseball where you just can't show the play again, you're just kind of relying on the text to carry you through until you hit that. So, but again, as technology changes and as we get more and more powerful machines, it should be easier to do. Whether it's easier to program and whether you can get around the legal issues is another story. And again, the other thing, is that the type of experience that you really want in a sim? Do you really want to be able to, or just kind of go through like you would with everything else and roll the cards and dice, or the virtual cards and dice, and tell yourself the story without the pictures? There's a reason why baseball is great on the radio, because it is the announcers who tell that story. You are relying on them to present the picture in your mind that you're going to paint. The great announcer Bob Murphy for the New York Mets, he's the one that would tell you, instead of calling the play-by-play, he was the one that was going to paint a word picture for you. And he was grammatically accurate enough, as you hear all the fun behind me outside, that he would use the past tense for things. Carter slid into third as the throw went to Schmidt. Or examples like that. Hernandez smashed a big home run off the pitcher. And we'll give you the happy recap after that. And so you learn to enjoy the game the way that Bob Murphy would call the game. Or listen to the storytelling of Vin Scully, who would, I'm not going to go into Scully now, but if you've watched some of my videos, you know that Scully will pop up every once in a while of how he would weave in a story about how he and Jackie Robinson would, race on ice skates as Justin Turner takes the ball outside to go 2-0. That sort of thing. Ernie Harwell and his homespun, the way that he called it. I mean, it's an intimate thing between the announcer and you, the listener, and all you have is their words painting images in your mind. Or football, which is the ultimate television sport. Why Pat Summerall was so good at what he did, because he used so few words to call it. It was Everson Walls, I think, in a game at Texas Stadium back in the 80s, and he's picked off a pass, picked off by Walls, can go, must go, will go. That's all he said. And you just got that visual of him running down the field, and he added to it. And so both styles, although they can't get much more different than Vin Scully and Pat Summerall as far as how they called events. I mean, they joked with Summerall that he got paid by the syllable by CBS all those years. But both very effective. And Pat was a master of calling sports that didn't need a lot of visual description. You don't need a lot when you're calling golf. You can see where the golf's there. You get a yardage on the screen. You might say, that's a 6-iron, or something like that. And so you, as a television viewer, can fill in those blanks there. He was more of a host. So which style do you prefer, and would you like to see more graphics into the hardcore sim games? I mean, yeah, the pipe dream is Strata or Apple coming out with something that had their accuracy or the ease of play of their games with the Madden EA style graphics or the NHL graphics, but I just don't see it happening. So let me know in the comments what it is that you think. Which do you prefer? Or maybe you like both. One night you just want to read the book, and the other night you just want to sit on the couch and watch the movie. It's all good, but I really do think we're getting to the point where it's going to come, where we can actually have that game and have modders design enough stuff so you can have that. So you can sit there in your living room or on your PC or even on your phone, because Pro Strategy Football 2021 is actually a mobile game as well, where you can sit there and have that experience of watching Don Newcomb pitch to Willie Mays at the Polo Grounds. And it looks like Don Newcomb pitching to Willie Mays at the Polo Grounds, and it's not it's not an arcade game. It's a sim game. So just something to think about there. All right. Well, that's enough from my mouth this week. Let's tell you how you get a hold of us here. So remember, Dave will be back next time. We'll interview Carrie from Pro Strategy Football 2021 and for episode 56. In episode 57, Roberto Schiavini was nice enough to sit down and answer some questions for us, and we'll get a new. So if you actually have a question for Roberto, put it in the chat, because we'll be sending him another batch before we go. So that's episodes 56 and Heinz 57 sauce. But episode 55, the double nickel, is what you've been listening to. Ways to get a hold of us. Well, go to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/digitaldice. That's TO, all one word. You go to our webpage at www.digitaldice.com, or go to our page, which brings us right to our Spreaker page, or you can send us a text or leave a voicemail at 978-751-DICE. That's 978-751-3423. Or if you're listening on YouTube, just leave a comment on YouTube. All right, so Dave will be back next time around. I'm Ron Juckett. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.